who you are?
Come again?
Can you give us an intro to who you are?
Oh, okay. So as you see on the screen, my name is Pasura Dantamano. So I've been a monk for 16 years. And I became a monk at 28 years old. So before that, I was just like you guys, to study in regular schools, got jobs. I was a hotel manager. I was a flight attendant. My part-time job when I was in university was DJ. So, sort of like do a bit of this, a bit of that. And then at 28 years old, I decided to be a monk, intentionally to stay for 4 months, but then I get a kick of it. So after 4 months, I continued to extend it, and just time flies, now 15 years. So, but I have known what meditation is and have been practicing meditation ever since I was very, very young with the very same techniques, because this is the temple that one of the founder was my uncle. So I get a chance to come to know him and learn with them, and also learn with the master of the technique itself. So that's how I get around it until 28 years old. So, so I grew up with kind of both experiences with the normal life, party, hang out, relationship, stuff like that, and another kind of spiritual aspect. So that's me.
You broke up a little bit. Was that just for us, or did everyone else have
that? Which part I have been broken up?
Just pretty much after saying that you learned meditation with your uncle.
My uncle monk, and also the master of the technique himself as well. So at the same time, just been practicing the path of meditation, I also had the normal life like everybody else. So I grew up with kind of both at once, and that's me.
Awesome, nice to meet you. Yeah, I mean, so what we're doing here in the experiment is we're trying to work on the idea. I keep going back to this quote that like the patterns of thought that created, we can't change the world that we live in with the patterns of thought that created the world that we live in. So we're really trying to like go down and kind of question our own inner worlds to help us question our reality, and work between our inner worlds, our community worlds, and then the larger worlds, and ask questions on all those levels. So we're really excited to be with you because I mean, I feel like we've already been talking about today, like feeling like the different like energy levels in your body and how it feels like when you're moving, I don't know, in systemic reciprocity is the word that I would use versus not, and detecting that. So I think there's a lot that Buddhist teachings has to say around that. And so I think there's a lot that we could learn from you. Yeah, so over to you. I think we're going to do a meditation and then have kind of like an open question form. Does that still work for you?
Sure. I thought it was the question sessions. So that's what I was told.
Okay.
I haven't got that information.
We could just do questions. Huh?
So it depends on how you guys want to run it. I have no idea, to be honest. I know that I'm supposed to be answering questions, but if you want me to get meditation before that, it's fine too.
I think it'd be nice to have like a short meditation, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, just to like drop in, and then we can do questions if that works.
Cool, that sounds good. So let's get down to business then. Let's begin with adjusting your body, stretching up a bit, loosening up your muscle. Don't forget that the foundation of meditation is relaxation of the body. Because when your body is relaxed, it allows your mind to discard external matters and return peace to within easier. So you can take some moment to relax your body, adjust your sitting posture. And before closing the eyes, can you just simply let your attention return to be with yourself? Just to feel your body, just to hear what your body is telling you. What you feel with your legs, your hands, your back, the sensation you can feel on your skin, all the way to the breath that you take as you are inhaling very softly and gently. And exhale. Feel your breath again, inhaling deeper and softer than the last time, all the way to the very end of your breath. And exhale, let it all the way out. Breathe again, take it even deeper, softer and gentler, until you can feel your in-breath tenderly caressing your center at the very end where it turns. And feel your out-breath slowly leaving your body from deep inside, while letting your eyes close very softly, in the way that you can feel the eyelashes tenderly touch one another, and the relaxation from your eyes spread to your forehead, face, and to your whole body. Take a few more moments to adjust your sitting posture. Make sure that this is the posture that you settle down so comfortably. When your body is well adjusted, you may feel as if there is nothing left within your body. The weight is gone. It becomes an empty, hollow space. Allow the flow of your blood circulation to move smoothly from head to the toes. And slowly imagine yourself sitting alone in an open space. You may picture yourself sitting on top of the mountain, looking down at the green rolling hill that stretched as far as the horizon. Here in this space, you find yourself in your own sanctuary, where you can just rest the body and the mind. And here in this space, allow your mind to free itself from any thoughts, any concerns, any affairs that you may have. Imagine as if you are blowing everything away into the surrounding space. Liberate your mind from all external affairs and matters, and your mind will automatically return to be within you. So let your mind gently touch the center point within your body. It is in the middle of your abdomen, the center of your body's gravity. Be aware of your center feeling and let yourself feel the center of this whole space. Well, let your mind be still, very softly. Feeling that stream of relaxation flow from that center point and feel every part of your being. It begins to fill from the top of your head to your forehead, nose, arms, neck and shoulders, arms and hands, legs, feet, all the way to the toes. Fill your whole body with stream of relaxation, and your mind will be liberated from external matter, and automatically you can feel that your consciousness return to be within you, to your comfort spot at the center. It immerses deep in the basin of inner peace within you. Let your mind stand still there. If there is any thoughts taking your mind away, softly bring it back to this comfort spot again. No need to be frustrated or try to shut them off. Keep returning to where you can be at peace, and these visiting thoughts will finally fade out into silence. Let your mind stand still and return to its natural state. Keep aware of that peace and comfort very comfortably. Automatically, the mind stand still will lead you deeper inside into deep inner peace that is already waiting. Our part is to do nothing and continue to free our mind from anything left inside. Free up that space within so that peace can fill that space. As you are aware of this peace and comfort, your inner space is filled with peace energy automatically. So keep aware of that very gently and softly, comfortably. until that is within. Let the mind stand still. The whole body is assimilating with the atmosphere, as if you can become one with everything, with the air, with the trees. Our body is made of the same elements as everything in the nature. Once our mind comes to the point of stillness, we can begin to feel it at the elemental level, how everything exists in the same way. So let your mind continue to be still, deeper in from that point of the center, from the center point of your comfort spot. And now that your mind stands still inside, let that flow of peace energy slowly circulate throughout your whole body, filling it up to your head, face, your whole body, arms and hands, legs, feet, until you becoming more aware of your body sensation. Notice your breath as you are inhaling very softly, feeling the way your breath goes down to its end, and exhale. Feel your breath again. Let it gently touch your center at the end. And exhaling. Keep aware of your center. And now that you are more comfortable, slowly stretch your head, your shoulders, your arms, your hands. And when you feel ready and comfortable, slowly open your eyes and breathe a few times. Okay, so that concludes the meditation part.
Thank you. Great. So first of all, I'd like to say hi to Ines and Angie. We kind of like dove right in before, sorry. Ines, and if you feel like asking questions as well, like go for it. So you guys had some questions that you prepared. Does anyone want to go first?
Sure, I can go.
Can you hear us all right?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Crystal.
So there was something that came up for a lot of us, which is this duality or trying to understand this balance between when are you just surrendering to something kind of with an open heart and being fine with it, or are you maybe just being lazy and giving in? So there's a lot of different situations in my life where I'm wondering about this, and often I feel like giving in feels easy for me. So from a point of where I would interpret it as, no, it's fine. I totally don't mind at all. So I don't feel like somebody is taking advantage of me. But I also know it's the easier way out for me. So how do I find this balance between, am I being humble and truthful, or am I just being lazy and taking the easy way out?
I think my answer would try to surprise you a bit, because usually I don't recommend people to surrender to anything at all. There's a big difference between surrendering to something and realizing the reality of things. So when you say you are surrendering because you try to go up against what's not in the nature. For example, like, you know, the nature of everything in the world comes down to three characteristics. Number one is impermanence. Nothing lasts forever, basically. Nobody lives forever. No matter how much I love this person, how I love my grandmother, she's not going to be with me forever. And I cannot hold on to it. And that's his first nature. The second nature is that everything always changes. Nothing stays constant. Nothing stays fixed. It's changing all the time. It's degrading all the time. And that's another thing that we try to go up against, that I want things to be exactly the same, predictable, which is the last one, controllable. I want everything to be absolutely within my control, predict, and plan. So these are three innate characteristics of everything in this world, this realm, that we can't go up against. So when you say surrendering, that in that sense, that because we try to keep up with things that not in the nature itself, until at some point you feel like, no matter how much I try, I can't keep up with this and just get so fed up and tired. So that's why you feel like, should I surrendering to it? But in our context, we don't surrender to something if we have the goal to pursue. But we're just accepting that these are the rules of the nature, that we can't change it. So how can I reach my goal by going along with this current state of nature? For example, you know, it's like, for example, like I'm a monk. The goal of a monk is to reach enlightenment. We take many lifetimes. And I can't predict what's going to happen in each lifetime. I can't be sure that I'm going to get better at it. So, and I'm going to have to face a lot of obstacles, sufferings that I don't surrender to it. But then at the same time, I don't feel like I have to fight blocking it from happening. When it comes, then what can I do at the present moment to get around it and continue to keep walking towards the goal? So that is more like the idea of it. So that's why the word Dharma that you probably hear about a lot in the Buddhist context, it literally translates as the truth. That's the meaning of the word itself. That's the word Dharma itself. It means the truth. But there's the truth that we already know, the truth that we have already experimented, and the truth that need to be, to receive in a state of revelation or realization, and that's come from within you. So as you go along with this, you begin to understand a lot more about it, that there are things that, in the nature you're gonna be facing. At the moment you're accepting that nature, you don't feel like you have to fight something anymore. And then when you don't have to put up a fight, it's kind of like go on the daily routine. One of the truth that, in our text said, there's a nature of suffering in our life, which means whether we know it or not, it's sufferings. But if you don't, if you know how to deal with it, it's not a big deal anymore. For example, when you get up in the morning, you need to go to the toilet to pee. So it's not a big deal, you pee every day, right? But imagine if any day you get up and there's no toilet or someone just occupying it. And that occupation of the toilet becomes so long, like an hour. So you see the scenario has changed now. It's become a bigger problem with you. Your suffering is getting bigger. And if you don't know how to resolve that, it's getting even bigger, right? So that's what's going on the same way with life as well. So that's why when things come across, it's not about surrendering, but it's all about how we can keep up our value standard by work up towards the goal. So that's the way we talk about it.
Thank you.
And go next.
Yeah, what's up?
Let me get on the screen. Hi, my name is Bart. Hello. The question that came up for me that I wanted to ask is, I think a question that pops up for a lot of people, and I believe that it's one of the essences of Buddhism to relieve suffering in the world. My question around this is, why does suffering exist in human life or in life in general?
That's a really, really good question. Okay, first of all, when you talk about the word world, in Buddhist context, there are three meanings. The first one refers to our body and mind. This is the first state of the word world. The second word that we also refer to world is everybody that share this place with us. That's the second part. Not even person, every creature, every beings. And number three is every object in it. So basically, these are what we call about the world. So, and as I mentioned before, that everything in these three worlds fall into the same characteristic: impermanence, changeable, and uncontrollable. The concept of suffering in our context refers to two parts. The first one is called regular sufferings. It's the changing that happened to you. You are born, you're getting aging, you get sick, and of course, one day you expire. That is the nature of life. Sometimes people don't like to be dead. Sometimes people don't like to be sick. Sometimes people don't like to be aging. I don't know, but it happens. Again, as we grow older, our body change. Those states of suffering happens regularly. That is something that happens for everybody. But the second part is called occasional sufferings. And that's one begins with the mind. To be straight to the point is from our own desire. That we constantly want something else, want something, don't get it. Want something to be with us, but we are being part from it. So it's creating something called mental suffering. So when you talk about suffering, there are two parts: physical sufferings and mental sufferings. Then the good question would be, why do we have suffering in life? It's not about the test. In our context, it's not about the test. Originally, the first part is just by the nature itself. that this body is not perfect. Our element that made this body is not perfect. That's why we need to consume. If you don't consume, you die. If you don't breathe, you die. If you don't eat, you die. That's the basic rule of thumb. But then because we need to survive, it drives us to get more, to want more, until it become excessive in that desire. Instead of trying to look for what is more important in life, what really matters in life. But if you spend a lifetime study, work, make money, just to get all the things that we need to material life, and then we die. And then at the last point, we don't even know what the heck is going on with my life for the whole time. So that's why when we talk about the word sufferings, we always going back to the origin of it, not to fix the first one yet, because the first one is our end rebirth. But the second one, the mental suffering, is something that have to directly dealing with our own desire. So that's why we always talk about, at least at the beginning, realizing yourself. And when you realize yourself, you realize the second part, need, want. So at least if we already study to become more moderate in the daily lives, it helps us to identify what actually true objective of this life more. So I think that's the idea. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I don't know either.
I guess,
helps, yeah.
I guess I kind of have a follow-up based on that. Like the idea of like suffering as like almost like a force in the world. Because I see like it feels almost like there's threads of it that run through the world, whether it be I do suffering and I do something that someone else suffers from, and then that continues to move. That person then does something because of that makes someone else suffer. So, and for me, if that exists, this kind of force, then it has to have a purpose within the larger scheme of things. So what in Buddhism, what do you say that purpose is? Or do you say that as a...
When you talk about this concept in Buddhism, the very hard part to think about is time. It's the matter of time, because you see things that's in one life. And when we talk about things, we talk about things about so many lifetimes in the past and so many lifetimes in the future. And that's fall into one thing that have a really big deal in that is called karma, which is action. What you have been explaining is an action that you do that's continue to have an effect on someone. So for example, if I hit you, you hate me, you want to retaliate. So we create a bond. So that bond become another kind of suffering. It's, that's like I caused you some kind of sufferings, and then one day you want to cause me back. And this kind of retaliation doesn't go, that's in this life, it's continue more and more. And since we have been living for so long, that's why it's kind of create this vicious cycle. So that's why the ultimate goal that we talk about is to end rebirth. My master said all the time, if I'm not afraid to die, I'm afraid to be born again. Because dying, that is the end, it's easy. But if there's no rebirth, it will be perfectly okay. But I don't know what they have to face in the next life. So that is scarier. So I think that's kind of the point itself, that because we have been kind of being around here for a very long amount of time, we have been creating some relationships, this kind of relationship with a lot of people. And there's kind of effects that keep coming back. At the same time, one part is to clear up our own mind. All of this, as I said, as desire, that's the cause of these sufferings. Then the question would be where that the desire comes from. In our text, we talk about the mind that actually originally at the absolute pure state, pure entity, but then it was manifested like let's say like a virus that we call defilements. So this one is basically the desire, which can also grow into some kind of other things like craving, hatred, ego, jealousy. So it drives us to create different, negative thoughts, words, and action, and those become karma. And this is falling line to this vicious cycle and the things that I said before about spending our lifetime just trying to get what we want all the time and never enough kind of thing. And feeling attached to people, attached to objects, attached to my jobs, my images. So it keeps going on and on. So that's why if we really want to end suffering at different stages, you cannot expect to okay, one day, tomorrow I get up, no more suffering. It doesn't work that way. The Buddha gets sick until the last day of his life. He died from diarrhea, you know. So, you know, it's not like even he's the Buddha, enlightenment, he's no rebirth anymore, he still gets sick. So at least, but the realization that this is the nature of things will no longer become much suffering for you, like I explained in the example. It's like these are things that, you know, hunger is a kind of sufferings, but if you know you have food on your table, it's not a big deal. So you can accept that hunger is right there. So my part is just to end it. But then when you talk about the greater scale of sufferings, then that would be something else that people worry about it more and want to
I can
resolve.
hotspot my phone. I hotspot my phone.
Okay.
It should be Alex.
1 second, Pasura.
1 second.
Yeah, I can see that your screen froze too.
Our internet is kind of breaking up.
And you're back.
Sorry,
Yeah,
withdraw.
give us a second.
Yeah, it should come up as pixel 926. Try mobile. Hotspot. Oh, there it is. All right.
It's going now.
Can you hear us now?
You hear us now?
I can hear you, but yeah, I think it's back.
Okay, if it doesn't work, maybe we could also turn our video on.
The connection seems to be so good.
Now, how about it?
Right.
Can you hear it?
Getting better.
No.
Better. Okay, we can keep trying. You want to have a question? Yeah, good.
So we were talking about like suffering, and then how can a person reach? How can it have the most positive impact in the world?
I'm sorry, it was like breaking up the whole question. Do you mind repeating it again?
Of course, the question is, how can a person have the most positive impact in the world?
At least, so as you're going back to the concept of three meanings of the world, you start from yourself being positive from within you. Everything begins with the mind. So, for example, thought is the products of your mind. Your mind generate thoughts, thought become your words, what become your action. So once it becomes your words and action, it begins to affect everyone and everything around you. So if your mind is positive, then it can create positive thoughts. Thought is more peaceful, thought is more kind, more compassionate, more towards giving. So it radiates into kind of words, smile in your face, the act of being helpful towards others, become more responsible, and it creates impacts on the scale of the society. And then you can radiate it out to doing that with people close to you first. Because even in our text, we talk about something called 6 directions of relationship that, have parents up front, teachers on the right, friend on the left, spouse in the back, colleagues and people we are working with at the bottom, and spiritual teachers on the top. So at least we have to fulfill our duties to the people that are close to us to create at least a better society, beginning from ourselves. And that impact, will become like I can be a role model of that positive impact for people in my 6th direction. And then it can expand to, because my parents, we have their own 6th direction, my friend, we have their own 6th direction. And that can create the biggest scale of society. So that is one of the texts we explain how to create this sort of like, more sustainable development society. But that begins with keep the mind clear first. Let the mind be always with a positive state.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up question? Well,
I do have a very general one, but
I think the mic is there. I'm not sure.
okay. Do you believe everyone has a purpose? And if so, how do we find it?
My master always tell me is that what you really want to know is already within you. I know it's hard to believe at first, but I'm sure. I'm sure that it's very hard to believe it at first, to just say everything that you need to know is already inside yourself. But usually we can, there are three levels of knowledge. The knowledge from listening, reading, this is the first step of knowledge. The second knowledge is knowledge from contemplation and analysis, and we use this a lot too. But the third one is called the knowledge from meditation and knowledge from within, knowledge from your inner life. I think everyone here have experienced something like, you were just taking a shower and suddenly you just realize something that you cannot explain in words. You just get it. So those things like insight, intuition, revelation, realization are the same thing. It comes from the layer of mental clarity that you achieve. When your mind no longer attached to, your external matters, external affairs, it returns to the inside, and that's when you can go into finding that what you ask for, what is true objective of life. Because the deeper you go, you begin to realize it in different level too. But I used to ask my master a lot about what is the true objective of life, and simply he answered that to find the true happiness that doesn't depend on anything. That's his answer. And then he explained a bit more that when we talk about happiness, it's not pleasure. Pleasure depends on external matters. It's about what we got, where we go, people we meet. If everything externally outside of ourselves, it gives us pleasure, it brings us ups and downs. We get it, we feel fulfilled for a bit, and it's gone. So it's like ups and downs. Happiness is completely something else. Instead of contentment, it's of being full, deeply connected inside. So I'm just full, and I'm content with it. I don't need anything else. It's just there. And it doesn't depend on anything. So that's the big difference between happiness and pleasure. And people spend a lifetime seeking pleasure. So that's why sometimes people don't realize that happiness is a lot closer. So that's what the master emphasized on how these, practicing of meditation does, allow you to get into that state and find the true happiness. And once you're there, you started to realize that better, deeper state objective too.
Hello.
Yep.
So I see people moving through the world, creating good or creating bad. And I find myself caught up in a lot of self-doubt in determining, what I should be doing. So I'm wondering if there is any advice or an approach I can take of how I can move through that self-doubt, and also how that relates to a desire that I might have that I am not aware of.
I like to quote the one teaching that the Buddha gave, and it's actually one of the very first. It was 9 months after his enlightenment. So he gave this part. It's basically like a foundation of all teaching in Buddhism, to be honest. The first sentence said, "Life sucks, suck it up." That's the kind of translation. Basically, it says a more beautiful way. Says like patience is a tool that can help us to endure, all these hardship of the mind. But basically, just say life sucks, so suck it up. So there will be things that you just have to suck it up because things won't be perfect for you. And then the second phase said that we're doing that, we accept this suckness of life so that we can reach the goal of, liberation of sufferings completely. And then the other two verses said, to reach that goal, never abuse or harm anyone. And that's become what you probably have heard Buddhism talk about, the main three things. Don't do bad, keep doing good, and purify one's mind. So basically it comes from the same sutras. In other words, in order for you to realize that, number one, there will be things that you can do and things that you can fix. This is the nature of the world because we can't bend anyone's will. But then the second thing that you need to do is that to keep your standard. What is your values that you believe in? So if my value is loving, kindness, compassion, if this is my value, so at least whatever I do, this is going to be what I express to the world. And what my master said to me all the time, so what the world really needs is a role model, someone who walk the talk. So if you can continue to be that role model with the values that you believe in, that it's not about being selfish only, but also feel like I can just be better than just living day-to-day life, but something greater, when continue to seek the true meaning of life on my own, you started to create changes in people around you at least. I think back to that, I have one analogy in my mouth. Hello, can you hear it? Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we missed something that you said, if you just want to repeat the last bit.
All right. So did I answer your question before that?
Yes, we cut out at being a role model.
Good. For me, that is probably the most important thing my master taught to me too, about that. What the world really needs the most is someone who can really walk the talk. It's easy to, say, the world should be like this, the world should be like that, but what do you really do to be what you say? So if it's, this value that you believe in, start from yourself, and it will create the inspiration to everything around you. But of course, in that part, I have to say it's going to be tough. I never said this thing is going to be easy though. You can't expect the whole thing of being good, keep up with the value is going to be on the rose petal.
I have a question. So if all of these forces are like playing out and they're all kind of necessary for us to achieve enlightenment, like, is there anything actually wrong ever, or is it all just happening exactly as it needs to happen? And if that's the case, then how do you like, what do you do? Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
I'm trying to understand your question. Is that you mean that there are forces to make things wrong, right?
No, I'm asking like if for example, like suffering, we need to learn from suffering because those are the lessons that we need to learn in this life to get to the next life. And for me, I can then like kind of extrapolate that to like more global challenges, like stuff that's going on with greed and like stuff that's going on with the way that we treat the environment. Like, is this all just stuff that has to happen so that we learn, or do we have any sort of control over what's happening? And if so, like what type of control is that, and how do we work with it?
This is not a lesson to learn. This is like a reciprocation that we have from our own actions, not about learning something. We know something, but we were blind by what manifested in our mind. One thing that is manifesting in our mind is called ignorance. Ignorance basically we translate as unknown. So either when you're born, we know nothing. We don't even know how to walk, how to talk, how to eat. We know nothing. Everything we know we learn later. And how can we be sure that everything that we learn is right? So which means either we don't know or we know it wrong. So these are two things. So this is the world of people full of ignorance. Just further we take it that way. So that's why there's a lot of the wrongdoings that happening, is that you're doing things wrong and stuff like that. But what we do is like karma can really affect the whole thing. It's like the dangers, the societies is starting from our own actions. So that's why coming back to what can you do as your part to dilute it. So if you think about these last kind of two kinds of energy, the positive and the negative, and these two energies like water and salt. Whenever you are being good, being nice, being kind, it's like you feel water in it. But then if there's a glass of water that you have a spoon of salt in the water will be very salty, right? And then if you change to the bigger container and add more water, it's like a bucket. The water will not be salty much. And then if you change into a bigger container like a swimming pool and you add more water, you may not taste salt at all, but salt is still there in the water, right? So that's how we do with the force. We call these two forces merit and demerit, punya and papa. And these two forces are fighting with each other the whole time. Each time we think, speak, and act righteously, we generate positive energy. Anytime that we act, think, speak negatively, we create the negative energy. We add salt. The problem is that since we have born so many lifetimes, we don't know how much salt we have already added in the water. So that's why when we talk about things like being in the present moment, the deeper meaning is no, it's not about just being the present moment. I can get drunk and be present. It doesn't work that way. It means that you realize that right now in the present moment is the only time you can make the choice to be better and fill up the water as fast as you can. Because there will be a lot of moments that I will slip and feel salt in my water. So if you talk about trying to change the energy, why we can't erase anything, we can only dilute it.
Lonely. May I ask about that you just said, if I add salt to the water, if I made a mistake, it's so hard not to make mistakes. Does asking for forgiveness helps, not with the person, just like by praying, feeling regret? Is that a way to add water to alleviate a little bit of that energy that we created?
Not technically reducing it though, but it helps us learn deeper. So when you talk about learning, it's not about like learning literally. It's more like how we let this thing imprint deeper into our mental characters. Because what we carry into next life is our habit and characters and karma. So we can carry only these two things, the characters and karma. So the same mistake that you do right now, and if you realize it's a mistake and you just like reflect on it, you get to gain in that into your memory, which you can carry to the next life. And even though in your next life, you may not know about your past mistake, but you're already born with certain kind of feeling that this is cut wrong to me. To become your mental character, which also help you to evolve better in the next life. But if you know, it's like I do something, make mistake, I say, what the heck, I don't really care about it. You know, I'm gonna be making a mistake again, so I'm not gonna be careful with that. So it's gonna be my habit, my character too. So in that way, it's not about this forgiveness. It's not about reducing the energy, but it's about realizing that what we have done was wrong. When we are monk, we have rules. I have to carry 227 rules all the time. So when we kind of break any of these rules, what we do is we confess with other monks. And in that part of confessions, basically it was just tell the other monk that I have done something wrong. So I realized I was wrong. So from now, I will try my best not to do, to think, to speak in that way again. So that is the importance of it. On the other part is that forgiveness reduces the karmic connection you have with someone too. I hit you, you hate me. You want to hit me back. You hit me back, I will want to punch you back. So it's kind of retaliation like this. So when we create karma, when we do any karma, there's two things happening. One is the energy, and the other one is karmic relationship that bond two people to retaliate each other all the time. So at least when you decided to forgive, you will let go of your part. At least I'm not going to try to get back even things, comes for me. And that is something important too. Because there are times that you get upset for no good reason. And who knows, could be something from long before.
So just based on what you're saying is that you said that we can only be better in the present moment, right? And that we should try to be a role model, and that we should try to like walk the talk of what we want to be. But and when you were talking about like reducing suffering, you said about like the people next to us and near us. But my question is that it? Or because, well, is there, how can I put it? Is there a way to, like, should we measure the impact, and should we try to say, okay, maybe in the present moment, I won't be doing this right now, but in the future, whatever we'll be doing will have a bigger impact, a bigger scale. Does that make sense or not at all?
It makes sense. It's the scale that you're keeping up to. So actually, I have seen my master asking this question a lot, that a lot of people with good intentions to want to change the world, want to see the world better. The difference is that the rate of changing is not as fast as we want to. So we get frustrated by it. That is the first part. The second part is that we want the world to be changed in the way we want it to be, which can be right, it can be wrong in many other people's perspective too. So, these are to take into consideration. That's why it's starting about ourselves, to at least realizing what is true to you. At least you can start to begin to give out a certain kind of values that can be applicable in every culture, because they're not going to be the same. So if you say loving kindness, compassion, generosity could be something, in general that people should have and should act, at least you can start with that. And you can start with that with people around you. And then if you can have the capacity to have more commitment, you can get to greater extent. Why not? It just that depends whether you want to go to that stage. You know that in our text, the word Buddha literally translate as the knowing one, or the enlightened one. It doesn't mean that the Buddha that you were talking about is the only one. There are so many Buddha, but the particular one that we usually refer to is the one who enlightened and teach and share and try to make differences, help others to free themselves around. By others, enlightened and just, I want to stay quiet and live this cycle of rebirth without caring about anybody else. So the other one is he comparing like this. Imagine that if we all live in one big prison, this cycle of rebirth is a big prison. We are trapped in here. It's not going to be in best condition, prison is prison. What can we expect so much? And one day there was a person find a crack and break out the prison. Some people will just break out and leave. Some people will just try, hey, come on, everybody, let's follow me. Let's get the hell out of here. If you say that, but what I want is just to not only break out of the prison, but just want to smash it down. So it take a lot more work to do, that's all. So that depends on what your will will be. That's why I said that at the beginning is about how you can go to deeper layers and started to realize that goal, the objective within you that is greater to the extent, because it's going to come with a lot of work to reach that goal. You can have the choice. But at least if you're trapped in the prison for yourself, how can you be as happy as you can and still keep up with your values in this prison while working the way to find the crack? That would be a good start.
Okay, I've been wondering about the Buddhist view on the role of human beings in regards to other forms of life in the world. Some traditions see human beings as guardians, of the nature world. Some other traditions see human beings as having the right to use, control, and dominate that nature. And some other traditions says like, hey, you are just an animal. Don't think yourself. You're thinking too much of yourself. Just relax. You are neither of those. What is the Buddhist perception on the role that we humans play in relation with nature?
The word human in Buddhist language is a being with developed mind. A being with developed mind. Without developed mind, it's exactly as you say, animal with the same instinct to survive. Now, if we don't continue to have the developed mind, it means we can degrade into something else. So that's why in the Buddhist perspective, animal is not something strange. It's former human being who has once did something that degrade themselves, so they'll be reborn in that state for a certain amount of time until work up the ladders until becoming human again. Because in this part, what different is that you have the higher state of the consciousness to make differences. If you choose to do it right, then you get to continue to more challenges. If not, it's going backward. But then, of course, you can come back to human form again. That's why human form is really important. The difference is that the consciousness that we have is for functioning. That's how we view it.
So in that sense, our relation with animals shouldn't be as different as with humans in the sense of just trying to do right? Not because you are higher up in the ladder of, you know, how would you say that? Of
Food chain.
yeah, not because you're more important, but just because it's another soul, and it's just the relation that you create. And you can also, I'm guessing that you can also create these karmic relations with animals, right? As we do with humans. Yeah.
If someone squash you, don't you think you're going to be upset?
Yes. We have a bug infestation in the house. We have these worms that just walk around everywhere, and we take like 20 a day, and these still are around. We have squashed so many by accident. I'm so afraid of all the bad karmic relationships I'm creating with all of them.
Well, accident, you know, karma is a crazy thing, but at least one thing to understand is that there's your part and their part too. Sometimes it's their karma to be, you know, in certain way, and gotta have to take this reciprocation.
Ines, I wanted you to...
Sorry, go on.
Were you still speaking? Sorry, I thought you finished.
No, it's continue.
Ines, did you have any questions? I wanted to give you space if you had questions. You're on mute.
I don't have any questions so far. It's okay. Thank you.
What else? We still have like a few minutes if you guys still have questions.
I have one, I guess. So you had said that your goal was to reach enlightenment. What if all of us want that, I think ultimately, but possibly have more earthly goals in the present, like, you know, attain more finances or to reach certain career milestones. So how do we know that those goals are meant for us? Like that what we're striving for is, I guess, something we're supposed to attain.
Does it give you joy and contentment? Simple as that. If it doesn't give you joy and contentment, it was just another function of life. We tend to confuse this goal of life is about these earthly goals and all this cliche stuff, work, family. It's not really a bad thing, but it was just kind of just another cycle that we end up to. So basically, if you just think about if you're here as a person to know more than you should, to free yourself from ignorance that we are born with, then how can we get to find that answer? Because without that answer, you know what, be content. You're always feeling that there are always big things. But you keep asking me this question because you always feel like they are missing something. I can't figure it out. And no matter how much you read and how much you listen, you're not gonna find it. It may kind of ring the bell, but is that truth that you gotta have to find it out within you? That will give you the whole answer. So that's why whenever you do something, it doesn't bring you joy, it doesn't bring you contentment. It makes you feel that you have strive for more and more and never ending. And you start to get loose that, is it really needed in my life? And you get the question all the time. At least that is not right. That's what I can tell you. To find what is really the right objective, you gotta have to figure deeper inside. In our text, we basically talk about 3 life goals. The first one, as you said, the earthly goal, you know, having family, make sure that I don't live without food on my tables, you know, all this stuff that, you know, make this earthly life more comfortable. And the second level is go in the sky. When I die, I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to a better place. which takes action, good action that they have accumulated in this life to go to the second goal. And the third one is the goal in the space, which means one day I want to be able to free myself from these cycles completely. So these are three goals. So, it is up to everybody's choice whether which goal you want to focus on. But then if you focus on the first one, then always bear in mind that there are always cycle of it that you're gonna come back in. So at least prepare yourself to have, all better quality equipment. And if you talk about how to achieve true happiness in all these three goals, what really you do and bring you most joy in your life? How old you, may I ask?
What was that?
How old are you?
I'm 28.
28. If you look back to the 8 years of your life, what kind of thing that gives you most joy?
My relationship, people.
What part of the relationship, to be more specific? What happened in that relationship that gives you joy?
Just like constant support. I don't know why. Constant support from my mom, dad, and my brother. It gives me joy. He can be loved that much.
And when you give the same kind of support to your mom, your dad, and your brother, what kind of feeling you got?
Joy.
Does it more joy than receiving or less than receiving?
I think it's equal for me.
You see, at least as I told you before, that at least start with something close to you that gives you most joy and contentment. And if you can do the same thing equally, and receiving and giving with people who are not close to you, to a stranger, that's create an impact in the world. If you're gonna do something to change the world, don't do it because you're upset with the way the world is. Do it because you love and you feel joy, just like you explained like that. And that you can walk the talk.
Did you want to ask something? I have a question. It's kind of a reverse question. I want to ask, what does it mean to be humble? But I want to ask it in the opposite way of asking, what is not humility, what we might mistake for being humble, but it actually isn't being humble.
Don't confuse being humble and expression of humility. They are not the same. Humility.
What's the noun for humble? Humbleness?
Humility.
So it is the right word, but it's different things.
Humility is the noun for humble. So usually we try to confuse between the being humble and expressing humility, or expressing being humble. So it's kind of confusing with these two. So by notion of that, we tend to think being humble is mean that I'm going to be more receptive, be more surrendering, stuff like that. But that's not really the case. Being humble is a state of the mind when you don't let yourself be consumed by the image of you that is greater than, superior than anybody else or anything else. But except the reality that, I'm not like someone that better than everybody. I have my flaws, I have my mistake, I have my, sorry to say, but shit in me that I have a lot of stuff I have to work with. So I'm not better than anybody else. At the same time, I'm not the same as anybody else. And at the same time, I'm not inferior comparing with anybody. So in our text, we talk about not comparing ourselves with anything and just keep looking within for how I can be better, rather than keep looking outside to see what is wrong with everybody. So that is the first stage of being humble. The second stage of being humble is to let go the idea of self. You know, it's like everywhere I go, I have the image of me sitting in front of me. And this image is what I hold on to. This is how everybody has to see. This is me, look at me. This is the way I dress. This is identified as Pasura. And I hold on to that so much. And that become attaching to it, and it reduces the humility that I have. Then expressing humility is something else. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to allow people to step on you to be humble. You just don't start being someone to step on others and begin to treat others with really the same feeling that, you know, everybody has their own nature of suffering that have to be dealing with, and now I can deal with mine, how I can help with yours. And if someone is trying to take advantage of you, it doesn't mean you have to fight back, or you just surrender it. You just sometimes run away. So, you know, it depends on situation. Expressions depends on situation. Humility begins with your mind. If you hold on too much to the idea of this is me, the idea of mini-me, and that will reduce the humility. You started to grow bigger, as you probably said the word ego in this point. Ego is completely the opposite scale of the humility. So it's not just about, oh, I'm better than everybody, just everything in the world is about me, and the whole world is circling, orbiting around me too. That is also another way to be egotistic, and that reduces the humility. Humility in our sense is also to the way that I can be empathetic of others people feel. And to be empathetic, that has to be something that I can look inside, like hold on to the image of me.
I had a question about the nature of good and bad, because I've heard you say like things are good and bad throughout this conversation, and I'm wondering about. It feels like that should be an easy differentiation, but in life, I've just seen that there's so much more gray. Like, I mean, the classic example, right, is like a guy who like robs a pharmacy to, you know, give medicine to his child, you know, and like, oh, that's bad. Or it's like, yeah, like I just find that there's so much gray, and sometimes the things that we consider bad actually have a role in the larger scheme of things. So I was just wondering what your thinking is around that.
Yeah, very good questions. When we talk about good and bad in our context, we talk about single action, not circumstantial. What you're referring to is more circumstantial, it's like the case of that guy whose kid is sick and he steal from the pharmacy to give it to kid. In my context, that situation, the circumstances is divided into the action of stealing is bad, the action of treating his kid is good. So you need, so that's why we don't look at it as gray. We look at it as one side and the other side. Now, coming back to the concept of good and bad, in the text, it does explain to some extent, because it's so to deeper sense, take a lot harder to explain. But so very basic thing, he said, anything that we do that burn ourselves, burn others, bad. Anything that we do, even I feel cool, but it still burn others, also bad. Anything that I do that burns me, but others feel cool with it, also bad. So good action refers to something that both of us feel cool when I do it. So that is the first thought. And this is the answer the Buddha gave to 7-year-old boy. So just think about the context of 7 years old. Then the second aspect of it is to reflect in terms of the result of the action. Any action that you do, if you look in a very, very long future, you won't regret your decision to make it. And it won't be troublesome for you in the very long future. That is good. If it's not, it's bad. In the third one, any action that comes from your crave, your greed, your anger, your ego, your jealousy, that's bad. So this is the three ways that we put it into kind of weighing between the good and bad.
I think we have time for maybe one more question if anyone has like a burning one they want to share.
How do you know when you're doing something based on your ego versus out of kindness?
Is that the question?
Yeah. Like, are human beings really altruist? Like, do we do things to the our ego? Like, do you have a way of knowing?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but in our text, I talk about the mental virus, right? You know that the hardest virus to wash, to kill is ego. Holding on to self is the hardest thing to let go. For example, right now I'm a monk. I don't care about being famous. I don't care about being rich. I try to train myself not to get upset so much. But still, it's not going to be easy to convince myself I am wrong. So ego is really kind of complicated thing to let go. Because my master give you the example like this. When someone say bad things to you, it's already very hard not to get upset. But it's a lot harder not to smile when someone gives you a compliment. So that is kind of, the way ego is playing. Attached to the idea of self is sort of something that takes a lot more into looking inside. And the more that you're looking inside, you started to feel that, oh, I still have this flaw, I still have this part I can be better. And once you work on it more and more, it started to help with reducing that ego by keep looking inside. It's not about, being judgmental to yourself, but it's about accepting the reality that I'm not perfect. I have things that I am not, very good at, and not about in terms of ability, in terms of character. I know that the goal is to be better than this, and I can be better than this thing. I just let go of some of this and let go of some of that. Because usually ego comes from holding on to a certain kind of abstract concept. It's not a reality. Everything that ego holds on to is not reality. It's just all made up in our head. So I'm not sure is that the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. This is, from my personal experience, this is really amazing and like such a cool thing to be able to talk to you and ask all these questions and have you available and willing to explore with us. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything before we sign off.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Angie, for putting this all together and acting as the intermediary. And thank you to Annette for working on all of our technical side of things. Does anyone else have anything else before?
No, thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Hello. Bye.
Bye bye.